today. Are you ready to start?
I guess I am. It's good to meet you. I've really appreciate everyone being here. Good morning. And thank you so much to AIGA Colorado and Lisa and Sam for inviting me to be a part of this. Today, I'm going to give you some stories on my career, and I'm not expecting that these things will actually necessarily, it's not a how-to, but it's kind of what I did, and you may get some inspiration from it. There's been a lot of changes through my career. They say, marketers say that you are your brand, and if that's the case, then I would say my brand started when I was a very young girl. The first thing I ever wanted to be was an artist, and my first memory is of drawing. And I went to art school. I have a bachelor's in fine arts, and my emphasis was in painting and sculpture. In addition to that, I was the youngest of 5 kids, and my older brothers and sisters were teenagers, and I always thought they dressed really cool, and I wanted to be them. I wanted to look like them. So I was noticing fashion at a very young age. My mother actually sews, so I learned how to sew from her. And I think all of these elements came together to begin for the beginning of my brand. If you hear something behind me, it's my cat running around, so just to let you know. The Lucero brand brings together art and fashion. I create clothing that helps people express themselves, and the brand is eclectic. It's romantic, playful, chic, and sexy. And you'll see on the right here my current logo, and that logo is a butterfly. And many people have asked me, what is the butterfly? Why are you using the butterfly in your logo? And when I first started, I don't really remember exactly why, but I believe it was because I believe the butterfly signifies beauty. And of course, I love the idea of transformation. But in different cultures, the butterfly can mean many other things. It can mean transcendence, life, spirit, perseverance, and love. In the beginning of my career, I thought of fashion completely as an art form. And I started doing wearable art jackets. All of these pieces are basically, they were pre-existing jackets that I painted on and added components like buttons and found objects and beads and things like that. And it was an exploration for me of the possibilities of art and fashion. Eventually I decided to, after being in the garment industry and working for a few companies and learning the industry, I decided to start my own line, and I started it in wholesale. And as I began, I started to realize that one of the things that I love so much is pop culture. And so many of the things that I did during that time, I used different pop culture symbols, such as on the left here, you will see that there's a t-shirt with a faux fur smiley face. And that, I always feel originality is important. Although the smiley face has been used many times in various ways, I don't think I've ever seen a faux fur one, and this one was actually a pretty popular item because it made people laugh. This is called clubwear, what I'm showing you here, and back in the day, that was obviously alluded to when people were going to clubs. They wore a little bit more playful kinds of things, and this was during when raves were happening and things like that. One of the symbols I love to use is a heart, and in this case, this is a broken heart, also made of faux fur. And on the right, the dress is made out of a vinyl tablecloth. This is at a fashion show in called City Spirit Cafe, which was in the lower downtown area when Denver was first starting to become up and coming, and there was actually things happening downtown. City Spirit is a well-known place that started it all. Now I want to talk about my first pivot. I decided I was going to open my own boutique and retail my line. And I started I got the space in the Lower Highlands neighborhood in February of 2001. And it took a while to get the space ready. And we ended up, it took 9 months, so it was kind of like a baby. And it was November of 2001 that we were finally able to open. It was right before the holidays. And as you, I'm sure, are very well aware, this was 2 months after 9/11. the tragic and epic events of 9/11. And of course, during that time, the economy was starting to have major issues. And I remember running into a friend of mine who actually worked in the Division of Labor and Employment here in Denver. And he said, "Are you sure you want to be opening right now? This is a difficult time." And I said, "Well, it's time. It's right for me. The time is right and I'm ready." And little did I know how difficult it could be. That retail is, there are many ups and downs in retail. And I did experience this for the 10 years that I was open. But I also did establish a clientele, and that clientele, and many friends. I've met many friends through retail, and many of those people are still my clients today. And I think it was one of the best decisions that I've made. One of the things that I would do at the boutique, it was a pretty large boutique, and so we were able to do fashion shows at the boutique itself, which it was a great way to market my work. One of the great things that I learned during this time in particular was that customers will tell you what it is that they want from you. So as artists and as designers, as creative people, we want to do we have our own ideas of what it is that we want to create, and that is all fine. But what ends up happening is that your customers will actually tell you what they want. And for me, I've prided myself on being flexible and understanding and listening to my customers. And surprisingly, this simple A-line, basic A-line skirt was one of the most popular items I've ever created. I sold this to many customers. People collected it in different fabrics and prints and colors, and it was a big piece for a lot of people. These also were, I call these they're baby bags. They're pretty small pieces, but they were a pretty popular item also, again, in a lot of different fabrics. It was at this time I started to become recognized by media, and this was in 5280 on the right. That was a really nice experience. But one thing is interesting about getting recognition by media. It doesn't always mean that you're going to get sales from that. It's not always something that you can say A happened and then B happened as a result of it. But it does help your reputation to be recognized in this way. This was from a magazine called Fashion Models Magazine. So these are just a few of the pieces that I created during this time. And then 2008 happened, and that's of course the Great Recession. I was not expecting that this was going to be a big change in my business, but it turned out to be that in the beginning of 2008, things were starting to slow down, but I didn't think it was going to be such a major thing because I had been used to it through that whole time. There were lots of ups and downs. But as the year began to progress, I began to realize that my customers were affected, that they were losing their jobs, their businesses, and even people who were normally doing well were starting to get affected, and I was not able to sell much, and I was taking it personally. I've learned since then that you can't really take these things personally, but it was difficult to sell even anything on sale or a piece of jewelry for $10. It was really an intense time. A lot of businesses were closing. This photo is at a fashion show in 2008. And I knew that the time was coming soon, that I was going to have to move from that location, and wasn't able to make rent towards the end of that. And I did move, and I found a smaller location and stayed there at another boutique location for about another year and a half. And then I eventually closed the retail part of my business. So during this time, really from about 2010 to actually last year, I took this time and became a fashion nomad. I went to various studios and tried different studios to try to bring back the magic of retail, people coming in every day and constant cash flow and things like that. But no matter where I went into a lot of different neighborhoods in the Denver area. Didn't matter which neighborhood I was in. It really wasn't really helpful because I didn't have those people just coming in off the street. So what I did during this time was I did a lot of custom appointments and also took the opportunity to rebrand my line to some extent. So I did more upstyling. You'll see here on the right, the skirt the woman is wearing is basically what I call a pop deconstruction. So I was taking a few different t-shirt images and putting them together. So you can see it's Che Guevara and Nintendo. So these things are, I'm not sure what the meaning is necessarily behind it, but I'll allow that for the viewer to understand it. These dresses were actually made from scratch, and they are taken from sports jerseys. And I took the numbers and I turned them on the side so that people could see the symbolism of it, instead of seeing it as a number, that there's a symbolism to them. And they remind me of certain Native American artwork, and I just love the look of that. I also took the opportunity to start developing dresses and putting a little bit more time and effort into the designs. In the boutique, it was difficult to do that because it was just a constant hurry to make more things, and people were wanting a less expensive product at that time. And so I started to go into dresses, doing more dresses. These are all made of vintage scarves. The dress on the left is called the Psyche, and this has actually been one of the more popular pieces that I've ever created. It looks great on a lot of people. I pride myself in being able to work with a lot of different kinds of bodies and trying to make everyone who comes to me look really good in whatever it is they're wearing. These are draped designs, so what that means is you're working in a three-dimensional way, just as you would as a sculptor. This particular moment is something I'm fairly proud of. I was asked by a PR agency to go to Royal Gorge Bridge and create a dress on the bridge at Royal Gorge. Royal Gorge was also in the process of rebranding during this time, and they were doing commercials to get people to come back to Royal Gorge Bridge because there had been big fires there a couple of years before that. So I was there from early morning until late at night and filming, and it was really a wonderful experience. So what I learned from during this time is that sometimes when you're open to change and pivoting, many unique and wonderful experiences can come from that. In 2015, there was a pivot, not necessarily in my business, but in general in life. There was a lot going on, and it was an election year. And I, just like many other designers, began to start seeing fashion as also, you can make a political statement to some extent with fashion. And during this time, I had started to use the words love and peace because, to me, I wanted people to see it in a different way. I had used the symbols before, but never the words. And I also added later the word truth. This is a photo from a fashion show. I've used berets over the years, and the berets, to me, yes, artists have used them in a kind of a cliche way, but also I think of them as a symbol of resistance. These dresses are also wearable art pieces. On both of these dresses, they are made with large appliques. They're made out of faux leather, and they say love, peace, and truth. This jacket on the right is also an upcycled piece with the word truth on it. 2019 came last year, and I decided it was time to open a boutique again. And I found a wonderful space right across the street from the Denver Art Museum. And what I love about that location is that it's close to museums and galleries. So many of the people who come into the space are already aware of fashion and design, and so I don't have to explain so much about what it is that I'm doing, and that's a nice perk of the space. Many tourists, people from all over the world coming through, and one thing that I always want to remind people about what it is that I do is that it's not just that I sell clothes, sell product. It's not just that I do a service for my customers. but I also want I want them to feel the experience of fashion. And that experience can be when you wear the clothes. One of the best compliments I've ever gotten is, or what I always love to hear is when people say to me, I wore this, I met so many people, I got so many compliments, I felt wonderful. And that's one of the things that I try to give my customers is the experience. Wearing the clothes and also the boutique itself. So when people come in, whether they're actually going to buy something or not, I want them to feel welcome. I want them to feel that they're enjoying the space. There's lots of color, there's good vibes. And that's an important part of being a fashion designer. And if you do your job right, you'll get some recognition for this. So during February of this year, I think it was, I was given this award as Best Designer Boutique, which was really nice to get because right around that time, we were all starting to consider closing our businesses. And it was a little bit ironic, but it really was a wonderful thing to receive during this time. These are some of the things that I did in 2019, fashion shows. I brought out a new line of scarves. The berets were updated a little bit. And so there was a lot going on in 2019. And then this year came along and I started thinking about what I needed to do when the COVID-19 issues started coming up. And I did end up closing the boutique temporarily. I closed it on March 14th. This quote is by Bill Cunningham, who's a famous fashion photographer. He says, fashion is the armor to survive the reality of everyday life. And it's never been more of an appropriate quote. The masks are the armor now to help us survive. And interestingly, once again, my customers came to me. I didn't go to them and say, hey, I'm making masks. They came to me and said, are you making masks? Can you make me some masks? And when that first started, I was really surprised because there was still a lot of controversy as to whether regular people should wear masks. And, but they just kept coming and I decided, okay, this is going to be my pivot for now to make my business survive. And I've made a lot of masks. I have someone actually helping me make these masks. Many of them have been selected for people if they have a particular question. Like for instance, the masks on the left, a woman had wanted earthy colors, and so I pulled fabrics from my stash and made those for her. I've used most of these fabrics. Many of the masks have been made from previous projects, so you will probably, you'll see this in just a moment. These were made from skirts, leftover fabric from skirts that I had made previously, and these are the skirts. So there's been a component that's been basically almost zero waste at the end of all of this. And there's also been, it's a little bit controversial, but I do believe that this is going to happen in the future, that people will start coordinating their masks and skirts. It looks like we're going to be wearing masks for a long time. And then I thought that was going to be my main pivot, but there was another pivot about a month ago, and I'm located, my business is located very close to the Capitol building where a lot of the protests for Black Lives Matter were happening. And about 3 weeks ago, I had just opened, we were allowed to open our businesses again. And I'd been open for about a couple of days. And one day I came into the boutique, drove up, didn't really see it right away, but you'll see there on your left, you'll see that there is a broken window. 2 windows were broken. Somebody had thrown rocks through the windows. I don't know who did it, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that I support Black Lives Matter. I did talk to the police about what to do, and they recommended that we board up the windows until things quieted down. And so that's what we did. We boarded up the windows for almost 2 weeks. The windows were repaired last Monday, and now I've been open for about a week. Again, I'm doing this by appointment because people are still not available. You know, many people are still concerned about going into boutiques or into any stores, let alone shopping for clothes. So my pivot now is I've found, we bought a canopy, and now we're taking some of the things outdoors. People can still come by appointment to shop. So we started that last Saturday, and we'll be doing that every Saturday. And the great thing, according to Oscar de la Renta, and I agree with him, the great thing about fashion is it always looks forward. And that is what I'm doing right now. I'm looking forward to the future, and I'm here to hopefully inspire you to look forward to the future also. And thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Mona. So this is the first time I'm seeing the presentation myself. And guys, while I talk, if you have questions, you can write them in the Q&A chat. And we are gonna like start in a few. But this was very inspiring also because you look so young, but you have so much history, and like look at the history through your presentation is really impressive. And I have to say, a lot of the clothes are not just clothes, but they're a piece of art.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And so one question here for you. Someone asked if you can buy the mask online or they are custom order.
Well, currently, we've been working to get them so that you can actually buy them on my website, but I recommend people going to my Instagram account and just send me a message there. And so I actually have a couple of Instagram accounts, but if you go to Mona Lucero Official and just send me a note, I can send you photos of what we have currently available, and we do ship. And so we've been doing it in the kind of down and dirty way because it's just been so hectic during this time. Surprisingly for me, I know a lot of people are saying that they have plenty of time right now, but that hasn't been the case for me. It's been super busy making these masks and distributing them. So you can always say hi to me and ask me about the masks, and I'll give you all the information. Or you can come to the shop too. So the shop is open every Saturday from noon to 5, and you can come in and shop at the shop. So you can actually easily see what they look like.
And guys, just so you know, we are gonna include was in an event, and we were talking about people like yeah, pivot and learning in your life.
Well, I would say that to me, one of the biggest, probably the biggest pivot was making the decision to go to New York for design. I went with $1,000 in my pocket, and I didn't have a lot of support from my monetary support from my family. And to me, it was kind of it was a belief in myself that I could make it and that I could do it, and probably a little bit of not knowing what was coming and didn't really know exactly how difficult it could be. But I think that was the best decision I've ever made, to go to New York and go to school there, because it's a great place to learn about fashion, but also a great place to learn about life.
So another question from Sam. What was the piece you are proud of most?
Well, there's probably a few, but the one that comes to mind for me is the Psyche dress. It's been interesting because that one was draped, and I think it just looks so good on so many people. And I think it's simple. There's certain things that are simple about it, but it conveys a lot.
Do you wear other clothes or just what you create?
I wear other clothes. I really don't like to wear other current lines, although I still do have some things like that. But I wear a lot of vintage, and I wear vintage that's combined with some of my own designs also. So I've been influenced by vintage also. So I have some pretty nice pieces that I really love, and every once in a while I'll pull one of those out. Those.
So another question from James. If so, how have conversation about fashion changed in 2020?
Wow, that's a really good question. Fashion, it's interesting because I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's a few vloggers that I love that are current. They're home working and they are vlogging right now, and they have a lot of interesting things to say. And then I read a lot about fashion too. And there's some really interesting discussions about it. For one thing, I think sustainability is becoming more and more important. And secondly, there is the question of whether fashion is relevant, which has always been, there's always some question about that. But in particular right now, that's really being discussed more openly about, like, is it really important to, to think about fashion, etc. And for me, I think fashion, it depends on how you see fashion. Fashion is, to me, it's about self-expression. And we need to wear interesting things or something that conveys who we are. That's what I think fashion is about. I don't think it's necessarily about, looking like, you spend a lot of money on a particular piece of clothing, something like that.
Yeah, I think as the concept of fashion has been changing a lot, especially during the pandemic, because like if you're home, like people don't feel they have to like dress up or like put something nice. And I saw also myself, I was most of the time with like gym clothes or like something more comfortable.
Yes.
What do you
That
think?
is very, I completely agree. I've been like that too. Lately, in the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to get back to my normal self. But it's interesting because fashion usually what happens with fashion is there are two forces. There's one force that goes one direction and another force that goes the other direction. And so I've been seeing there's that part of where people are very casual because they think nobody's going to see them. But then there's this other element. There are people who are really getting dressed up and they're doing Zoom meetings and they're going all out. So there's two elements happening right now. And fashion reacts to things. And so for now we think, oh, it means we're going to be casual in the future. That may not be the case. We might actually go the opposite way, or at least some people will probably go the opposite way and get more dressed up, so there's a lot of different ways it can go.
Yeah, I actually at one point I was organizing like date nights at home and like dressing up. And I think at the end of the day, you don't do for the other, you just do for yourself. And there is no right or wrong, but like fashion is a point of view. So everyone has his perspective. So
it's true. But one of the things I always try to remind people is that when we get dressed up in the morning, we only see ourselves, unless we're looking in the mirror all the time. We get dressed up, or we get dressed, we see, take a shower or whatever, and hopefully we look decent enough. And we don't really look at ourselves again. But other people are looking at us. And so I always say it's polite to get a little bit, put yourself together a little bit, because other people have to look at you all day long. And I think for most people look fine, but every once in a while I see somebody and I go, that t-shirt looks like you haven't, like, you pulled it out from the bottom of your laundry basket and your shorts are falling off and, you didn't make any effort at all. And it says something, it's actually doesn't make you look really, people do make judgments based on what we wear.
yeah, that's another very delicate subject. People tend to judge a lot, and I think fashion is very judgmental based on like what you wear or not.
Well, and I agree with that, but we judge people even who don't know anything about fashion, still judge. So if you see somebody wearing a suit walking down the street, you make a judgment about who they are and what they're about. If you see somebody who is wearing a beautiful gown or something, you make judgments. So we all make judgments, and sometimes they're split second, but we're making them.
So I have another question for you. Considering all these changing that we are going through right now, do you have any recommendation for like young fashion designers that just graduated and they're starting their career in 2020?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, there's opportunity. There's always opportunity. And it's just a matter of figuring out where those opportunities are and finding your niche. But especially, I think you should go to school. I always tell designers, you should go to school. You need to learn about your craft, but also I think it's important to learn about other things besides how to sew something, how to do a pattern. I think it's important to learn about history and learn about other things. Your fashion, your clothing will be more interesting as a result of that. And modern designers, especially at the top of their game, understand these things. So you want to be a part of that dialogue.